The alien child fell, and a human's embrace stopped her tears. Fallen starfruit. The morning sun cast long shadows through the crystalline starfruit trees as Marcus Vale adjusted the irrigation system for the third time that week. The delicate, translucent fruits hanging from the branches caught the light like captured stars, their sweet fragrance filling the air around the orchard. He preferred working here at the colony's edge, where the only sounds were the gentle hum of his equipment and the distant calls of Terralux's native birds. Haven's Rest sprawled in the valley below, a patchwork of human prefab structures and the flowing organic architecture favored by the Zetherians. Marcus could see the market square from his elevated position, where the two species mingled cautiously, their children playing together while adults maintained polite but distant interactions. 5 years since the reconciliation accords, and still the peace felt fragile as morning frost. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, his weathered hands steady despite the tremor that sometimes visited them in quiet moments. The war had ended, but its echoes lived in his bones, in the way his shoulders tensed when he heard unexpected sounds. Here among the trees, he could almost forget the screaming metal and burning skies that had driven him to seek sanctuary in this remote corner of the galaxy. A branch snapped somewhere above him. He looked up to see a small figure scrambling through the upper canopy of the largest starfruit tree, amber eyes bright with excitement. The child was clearly Zetherian, her skin bearing the characteristic crystalline patches that caught and reflected light in mesmerizing patterns. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, her movements confident as she reached for a particularly large fruit hanging just beyond her grasp. "Careful there," Marcus called up, his voice rusty from disuse. "Those branches get thin toward the top." The child paused, looking down at him with curious eyes. Her skin flickered, with pale gold light, a sign Marcus had learned indicated surprise or uncertainty. For a moment, they simply regarded each other across the space between species, between worlds. Then the branch gave way. The child's shriek pierced the morning quiet as she tumbled through the lower branches, her small body striking leaves and smaller limbs before hitting the ground with a sickening thud. Marcus was moving before conscious thought took hold, his military training overriding years of careful isolation. She lay curled on her side, gasping for breath, her skin now pulsing with deep red patterns that spoke of pain and fear. No broken bones that he could see, but she was badly shaken. Tears streamed down her face as she struggled to sit up. "Hey, it's okay," Marcus said softly, kneeling beside her. "You're going to be fine." The child looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. Her skin continued to pulse with distress signals, and her sobs came in hiccuping waves. Without thinking, Marcus gathered her into his arms, feeling how small and fragile she was against his chest. "Shh," he murmured, rocking her gently. "You're safe now. I've got you." Gradually, the child's crying subsided. Her skin patterns shifted from red to soft amber, then to a gentle blue that Marcus recognized as contentment. She leaned against him, her breathing evening out as she found comfort in his embrace. "Pip, Pip, where are you?" The voice came from the direction of the colony, musical and urgent. Marcus looked up to see a Zetherian woman running toward them, her skin blazing with the deep purple of maternal anxiety. She was beautiful in the way of her people, with features that seemed carved from living crystal and eyes that held depths of ancient starlight. She stopped short when she saw them, her skin patterns flickering through a rapid sequence of colors as she processed the scene before her. Her daughter, safe and calm in the arms of a human stranger. She fell from the tree, Marcus said quietly, not wanting to disturb the child's peace. "I don't think she's seriously hurt, but she was pretty scared." The woman approached slowly, her eyes never leaving her daughter's face. "Pip? Are you all right, little star?" The child, Pip, looked up at her mother and then back at Marcus, her skin now glowing with a warm golden light. "The tree man caught me, Mama. He made the scary go." "Away!" Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a warmth he'd thought lost forever. When he looked up at the woman, he found her watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read, her skin patterns cycling through colors he didn't recognize. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft as starlight. "I'm Zena. And you? You're Marcus Vale, aren't you? The one who tends the starfruit trees." He nodded, suddenly aware of how long it had been since someone had spoken his name aloud. "I am." "Well, Marcus Vale," Zena said, reaching out to take her daughter from his arms, "it seems my family owes you a debt." As Pip transferred to her mother's embrace, her small hand lingered on Marcus's arm for a moment, her skin flickering with a message he somehow understood without words. Gratitude, trust, and the beginning of something new. The morning sun climbed higher, casting its light on 3 figures beneath the starfruit trees, and Marcus felt the first crack in the walls he'd built around his heart. Healing light 3 days had passed since the incident at the starfruit tree, and Marcus found himself glancing toward the colony more often than he cared to admit. He'd replayed the encounter countless times, remembering the trust in Pip's eyes and the unreadable expression on Zena's face when she'd looked at him. The sound of approaching footsteps made him look up from the seedling tray he was preparing. Zena walked up the path toward his workstation, moving with the fluid grace characteristic of her people. In the afternoon light, her crystalline skin patches caught the sun like scattered diamonds. She carried a woven basket and wore a simple tunic that shifted color subtly as she moved. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, her voice carrying the musical undertones that made Zetherian speech so distinctive. "Not at all." Marcus set down his tools, suddenly conscious of the soil under his fingernails and the sweat on his shirt. "How is Pip? Is she recovering well?" "That's actually why I'm here." Zena's skin flickered with what Marcus was beginning to recognize as her thinking pattern, soft ripples of lavender and silver. "She's been asking about you constantly, the tree man who caught her when she fell." A gentle smile played at the corners of her mouth. "She wants to see where the starfruits grow." Marcus felt that same unexpected warmth in his chest. "She's welcome here any time, though maybe we should start with the lower branches." "I was hoping you might say that." Zena lifted the basket. "I brought lunch, if you don't mind sharing. Pip is resting now, but I thought perhaps we could talk." They settled on a blanket beneath one of the older trees, its trunk thick enough to provide comfortable shade. Zena unpacked her basket with careful precision, revealing an array of foods Marcus didn't recognize alongside some familiar colony staples. The alien dishes glowed faintly, their bioluminescent properties both beautiful and appetizing. "These are traditional healing foods," Zena explained, offering him a piece of something that looked like crystallized fruit, but tasted like honey and starlight. "My grandmother always said that proper healing requires feeding both body and spirit." Marcus bit into the offering, surprised by the complex flavors that seemed to shift on his tongue. "Your grandmother sounds wise." She was. Zena's skin patterns shifted to deep blue shot through with gold. Colors Marcus didn't recognize but somehow understood spoke of love and loss. "She raised me after my parents died in the early conflicts, before the war truly began." The words hung between them, heavy with shared history. Marcus set down his food, his appetite suddenly gone. "I'm sorry. I know. I know what my people did to yours. And I know what mine did to yours." Zena's patterns cycled through a rapid sequence before settling into calm amber. "But that's not why I'm here, Marcus. I'm here because when Pip fell, you didn't see a Zetherian child. You saw a child who needed help." Marcus looked up at her, struck by the directness of her gaze. Any decent person would have done the same. Would they? Zena reached into her basket again, this time producing a small device that looked like a crystalline flower. "This is a healing resonator," It reads bio-patterns and emotional states. When I use it on Pip, it shows me exactly what she experienced during her fall. She activated the device, and suddenly the air between them filled with swirling patterns of light, fear transforming into safety, panic melting into comfort. Marcus watched, mesmerized, as the colors told the story of those crucial moments. "She felt no fear of you," Zena said softly. Even in her pain and confusion, she recognized kindness. "Children see clearly, Marcus. They haven't learned to hate, yet." Marcus stared at the fading light patterns, feeling something tight in his chest begin to loosen. "I spent so much time during the war being afraid I'd become a monster, that maybe I already was one." "Show me your hands," the request was, so unexpected that Marcus almost laughed. "What? Your hands, please." Hesitantly, Marcus extended his hands, palms up. Zena leaned forward, her own hands hovering just above his. Her skin began to glow with soft, rhythmic pulses, and Marcus felt a strange, tingling sensation spread from his palms up his arms. Zetherian. "Healing touch can read the emotional residue in living tissue," Zena explained, her voice taking on the formal cadence of someone sharing sacred knowledge. "Your hands have built and planted and nurtured. They've caught falling children and tended wounded plants." Her patterns shifted to warm gold. "These are not the hands of a monster, Marcus Vale." The intimacy of the moment caught Marcus off guard. He found himself studying Zena's face as she concentrated, noting the way her features seemed to shimmer slightly, as if carved from living light. When she looked up and met his eyes, he felt something pass between them. A recognition. A possibility. "Should go," Zena said, but she made no move to pull her hands away. "Pip will wake soon, and she'll want her dinner." "Bring her tomorrow," Marcus found himself saying. "If she wants to see how starfruits grow, I can show her the propagation chambers. And maybe—" He hesitated, then pushed forward. "Maybe you could show me more about Zetherian healing techniques. I've been trying to help some of the hybrid plants, but I think I'm missing something." Zena's smile was like sunrise breaking over the crystalline mountains. "I'd like that very much." As she packed up the remains of their meal, Marcus felt the afternoon settling around them like a comfortable blanket. The war felt distant here, a shadow from another life. What mattered was the woman beside him, the gentle play of light across her skin, and the promise of tomorrow. "Marcus?" Zena paused at the edge of the clearing, her basket balanced on her hip. "Thank you, not just for catching Pip, but for this. It's been a long time since I've had someone to share lunch with." After she left, Marcus stood among his trees for a long time, watching the light fade from the sky. His hands still tingled where she'd touched them, and for the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to morning. Blooming trust. The hybrid garden took shape over the following weeks like a living bridge between two worlds. Marcus had cleared a section of land between his starfruit orchards and the colony proper, and together he and Zena worked to create something neither human nor Zetherian agriculture had achieved alone. Pip had become their eager assistant, her small hands surprisingly skilled at the delicate work of grafting human root systems with Zetherian light-conducting stems. She chattered constantly as they worked, switching between her mother's musical language and the colony's common tongue, occasionally inventing words when neither seemed adequate for what she wanted to express. "Look, tree man," Pip called out, holding up a seedling that pulsed with gentle bioluminescence. "It's singing." Marcus crouched beside her, marveling at how the tiny plant seemed to hum with life. "What's it singing about?" "It's happy," Pip said, with the certainty that only children possess. "It likes having both kinds of roots." Zena laughed from where she knelt nearby, her hands deep in the rich soil. "She's not wrong. The bioresonance patterns are remarkably stable. I've never seen such successful integration." Marcus watched Zena work, noting how her skin patterns shifted subtly as she communed with the plants. Over the past weeks, he'd learned to read some of her simpler expressions, the soft gold of contentment, the bright silver of curiosity, the warm amber that appeared when she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. "It's because we're working together," he said, settling into the earth beside her. "Human techniques focus on soil chemistry and structural support. Your people understand the energy flow. Combined," he gestured at the thriving garden around them. "Combined, we create something beautiful," Zena finished, her voice soft. Their fingers brushed as they reached for the same tool, and Marcus felt that familiar electric tingle spread up his arm. Zena's skin flickered with rose-gold patterns. He was beginning to associate with attraction, and she didn't pull away. "Marcus," she said, and something in her tone made him look up from the seedling in his hands. "Yes? I need to tell you something about why I came to Haven's Rest." Marcus set down his tools, giving her his full attention. Pip continued her work nearby, humming to herself as she tended to a row of glowing vegetables. "My bondmate died. In the final battle above Zithros Prime," Zena began, her skin cycling through deep blue and silver, colors of grief and memory. "He was a communications officer on one of our ships. When the human fleet broke through our defenses..." She paused, gathering herself. "The explosion was visible from the surface. I watched it happen." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. "Zena, I know you were there," she said quietly. "I've known from the beginning. Lieutenant Marcus Vale, combat engineer, attached to the Terran Expeditionary Force. Your name was in the casualty reports." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He started to stand, to put distance between them, but Zena's hand on his arm stopped him. "Wait. Please, let me finish." Marcus remained frozen, half-crouched as Zena continued. "For 3 years after the war, I hated everyone who wore a human face. I came to Haven's Rest because I thought isolation would help me heal, but really I just carried my anger to a new place." Her skin patterns shifted to deep purple shot through with gold. "Then Pip fell from your tree, and I watched you hold my daughter like she was precious, and I realized..." "Realized what?" "That maybe healing isn't about forgetting. Maybe it's about choosing to see the person in front of you instead of the uniform they used to wear." Marcus sank fully to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of her words. "I helped design the weapons that killed him. The breach charges that opened your defense grid. I know." Zena's hand moved to cup his face, her skin warm against his cheek. "And I choose to see the man who builds gardens instead of the soldier who once tore them down." Pip looked up from her plants, sensing the shift in mood around her. "Mama, why are you sad colors?" Zena smiled through the tears that had begun to streak her crystalline cheeks. "Not sad, little star. Healing colors." She leaned forward then, closing the distance between herself and Marcus, and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft, tentative, full of forgiveness and new beginnings. Marcus felt years of guilt and self-hatred begin to crack and fall away like old bark from a growing tree. When they parted, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "I don't deserve this. Don't deserve you." "That's not your choice to make," Zena whispered, her skin now glowing with warm gold and silver. "Love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing each other, every day, despite everything that came before." Pip had abandoned her seedlings and now wrapped her small arms around both adults. "Group hug," she announced, and her skin began to pulse with the bright, joyful patterns of a child who felt safe and loved. They stayed like that as the sun moved across the sky, 3 beings from different worlds choosing to build something new together. Around them, the hybrid garden flourished, its plants swaying in a breeze that seemed to carry the promise of seasons yet to come. That evening, as they prepared to return to the colony, Pip ran ahead while Marcus and Zena walked slowly through the garden paths. Their hands were intertwined, and Marcus marveled at how right it felt, how complete. "What happens now?" he asked. Zena squeezed his hand, her skin flickering with patterns of hope and determination. Now we keep growing. The garden, ourselves, this thing between us, and we show everyone else that different roots can share the same soil. Storm clouds gathering, the emergency assembly notice arrived 3 weeks later, its stark red lettering demanding the presence of all colony residents. Marcus found the message slipped under his door when he returned from the morning harvest, and the formal tone made his stomach clench with familiar dread. He arrived at the community center to find the large space buzzing with nervous energy. Humans clustered on one side of the room while Zetherians gathered on the other, the careful integration of recent months suddenly forgotten. Marcus spotted Zena and Pip near the back, Zena's skin cycling through anxious purple patterns as she held her daughter close. Colony Administrator Chen took the podium, her face grim. "I've received communication from the Terran Colonial Council. There's been an incident at the mining station on Kepler 442b. A Zetherian transport was destroyed, killing 17 civilians. Intelligence suggests it was sabotage." The room erupted in angry voices. Marcus watched as the careful peace of Haven's Rest began to fracture along old battle lines. Accusations flew back and forth, fear and suspicion replacing the tentative trust that had been building. "Furthermore," Chen continued, raising her voice over the din, "the Council has ordered a security review of all mixed colonies. We're to report any suspicious activities or relationships that might compromise colony safety." Marcus felt ice form in his veins as several pairs of eyes turned toward him. He'd been seen with Zena and Pip constantly over the past month, their growing relationship no secret among the colonists. "That's ridiculous," called out Dr. Hendricks, one of the human medical staff. "We've had no security incidents here." "The Council's concerns are valid," replied Councillor Vorth, the senior Zetherian representative. His skin pulsed with the deep red patterns of anger. "How do we know the humans among us weren't involved in the attack?" The accusation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Marcus stood, his military training overriding his desire to remain invisible. "That's enough. We're neighbors here, not enemies." "Easy words from someone who's been fraternizing with the enemy," sneered Collins, a human miner whose prejudices had never been well hidden. "How do we know you haven't been passing information to your Zetherian friends?" Marcus felt the familiar rage building in his chest, the same anger that had sustained him through years of war. But before he could respond, Zena rose from her seat. "Marcus Vale is not your enemy," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence. Her skin blazed with protective gold patterns. "He's a man of honor who has shown nothing but kindness to my daughter and respect for our ways." "Honor?" Collins laughed harshly. "He's a war criminal cozying up to his former targets. Makes a man wonder what he's really after." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He saw Pip pressing closer to her mother, confusion and fear replacing her usual bright curiosity. Around the room, faces that had been friendly just hours ago now looked at him with suspicion and disgust. "That's enough," Chen said sharply. "We're not here to relitigate the war or make accusations without evidence." But the damage was done. As the assembly broke up into angry clusters, Marcus found himself isolated in the center of the room. Even some of the humans he'd worked with avoided his gaze, unwilling to be associated with someone now marked as suspicious. Zena approached him slowly, Pip clinging to her side. "Marcus, don't." The word came out harsher than he'd intended. "They're right. I shouldn't have gotten involved. I should have stayed in my orchards where I belong." "You don't mean that." Marcus looked at Pip's frightened face and felt his heart shatter. "Look around, Zena. Look what I've brought down on you and Pip. They're watching you now because of me." "I don't care what they think. You should." Marcus stepped back, putting distance between them. "For Pip's sake, you should." He turned and walked away, ignoring Zena's calls after him. Outside, the evening air felt thick and oppressive, as if a storm was building on the horizon. Marcus made his way back to his orchards, back to the solitude he'd foolishly abandoned. But solitude no longer felt like sanctuary. It felt like exile. The next morning brought worse news. Chen arrived at his workstation with a formal document bearing the Terran Colonial Council seal. "I'm sorry, Marcus," she said, genuine regret in her voice. "The Council has ordered a full investigation into all human-Zetherian relationships. You're restricted to your residential area pending review." Marcus took the paper with steady hands, though inside he felt like he was drowning. "What about my work? The hybrid garden?" "Suspended. All joint projects are on hold until further notice." After Chen left, Marcus stood alone among his starfruit trees, watching the morning light play through their crystalline branches. In the distance, he could see the hybrid garden he and Zena had built together, already showing signs of neglect. The carefully tended plants would wither without constant care, their delicate balance requiring the combined knowledge of both species. Like everything else they'd tried to build together, it seemed destined to die. Part 5. Roots Intertwined. The colony assembly hall had never felt more like a battlefield. Marcus stood before the gathered residents, his formal statement clutched in one hand while he faced a sea of hostile and curious faces. 3 days of house arrest had given him time to think, to remember who he'd been before the war and who he wanted to become after it. Administrator Chen called for order, though the tension in the room remained thick as smoke.
"The Colonial Council has completed its preliminary investigation. Mr. Vale, you have the right to address the Assembly before any final decisions are made." Marcus approached the podium, his steps echoing in the sudden silence. He could see Zena
and Pip in the third row, Zena's skin cycling through anxious patterns while Pip watched him with wide, trusting eyes that made his chest tight. "My name is Marcus Vale," he began, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. 5 years ago, I was Lieutenant Marcus Vale, combat engineer with the Terran Expeditionary Force. I designed weapons. I built the charges that breached Zetherian defense stations. I participated in actions that led to the deaths of thousands. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but Marcus pressed on. "I came to Haven's Rest because I couldn't live with what I'd done. I thought isolation would be penance enough, that tending plants might somehow balance the scales for all the life I'd helped destroy." He paused, meeting the eyes of colonists he'd worked beside, humans and Zetherians alike. "I was wrong." Collins started to stand, a sneer on his face, but Chen gestured him back down. 3 weeks ago, a child fell from a tree. A Zetherian child whose father I might have killed during the war. When I caught her, when I held her while she cried, I didn't see an enemy. I saw a scared little girl who needed help. Marcus's voice grew stronger. That's when I realized that penance isn't about hiding from your past. It's about using what you've learned to build something better. He pulled out a data pad, displaying holographic images of the hybrid garden. Zena Corthil. And I created something that shouldn't exist according to our respective sciences. Human agricultural techniques combined with Zetherian bioresonance cultivation. The plants we grew together are stronger, more resilient, more beautiful than anything either species could create alone. The images showed thriving crops, glowing, fruits, flowering vines that seemed to dance with their own inner light. Even the most skeptical faces in the audience showed signs of wonder. But that's not why I'm standing here today, Marcus continued. I'm here because I love Zena Corthil. I love her strength, her wisdom, her capacity for forgiveness. I love watching her daughter discover the world with wonder and joy. And I love the man I become when I'm with them, someone worthy of the second chance I never thought I deserved. The hall had gone completely silent. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat as he delivered the words he'd rehearsed 100 times. The Colonial Council wants to know if our relationship compromises colony security. Here's your answer. Yes, it does. It compromises the security of hatred. It threatens the foundations of fear and mistrust that keep our species apart. It's dangerous to the idea that we can't learn to live together. He stepped away from the podium, addressing the assembly directly. I won't apologize for choosing love over fear. I won't apologize for building gardens instead of weapons. And I won't let anyone, council investigators or colony neighbors, threaten the family I've found here. The silence stretched for long seconds before Xena stood, her skin blazing with patterns of pride and determination. If loving Marcus Vale makes me a security risk, then I accept that designation gladly. Our daughter calls him Earthfather because he's shown her that. Kindness doesn't recognize species boundaries. One by one, other colonists began to stand. Dr. Hendricks rose first, followed by several human families who'd benefited from Xena's healing skills. Then Councillor Vorth stood, his skin showing the deep blue of conviction. The Zetherian Council has also investigated this matter, Vorth announced. We find no evidence of security violations. More importantly, we see evidence of exactly the kind of cooperation the reconciliation accords were meant to foster. Administrator, Chen looked around the room, noting how many colonists were now on their feet. It seems the colony has spoken. Mr. Vale, your restrictions are lifted. The hybrid garden project will resume immediately. The assembly dissolved into conversations as neighbors began to reconnect across the artificial divisions of the past week. Marcus found himself surrounded by well-wishers, but his eyes sought only Xena and Pip. When he finally reached them, Pip launched herself into his arms. I knew you'd come back, Earthfather. Mama was sad colors, but I told her you'd come back. Marcus lifted the child, marveling at how perfectly she fit against his shoulder. I promised I'd teach you to climb safely, didn't I? Marcus, Xena said softly, and when he looked at her, he saw tears streaming down her crystalline cheeks. Her skin glowed with patterns he'd never seen before, complex spirals of gold and silver, and rose that seemed to speak of futures being born. I meant every word, he told her. About loving you, about choosing this family, about building something better. Xena reached up to touch his face, her palm warm against his cheek. Then let's go home. Our garden needs tending. Epilogue. 6 months later. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows of the house Marcus and Xena had built at the edge of the hybrid garden. It was a curious structure, combining human engineering with Zetherian aesthetics, solid. Foundations supporting walls that seemed to flow like frozen music. Windows that caught and refracted light in patterns that changed throughout the day. Marcus stood at the stove, attempting to prepare traditional Zetherian breakfast cakes while Xena sat at the table, her hands resting on the gentle curve of her belly. The pregnancy had been unexpected but welcomed, a biological impossibility made possible by the same hybrid techniques they'd developed for their plants. They're glowing, Pip observed, peering over Marcus's shoulder at the cooking cakes. That means they're almost ready, Marcus replied, though he still wasn't entirely sure he understood the science behind bioluminescent cooking. Xena laughed, her skin flickering with patterns of amusement and love. They're supposed to glow, little star. It means the nutrients are properly activated. The morning routine had become precious to Marcus. The simple domesticity of shared meals, Pip's chatter about her lessons at the integrated school, Xena's gentle corrections to his still imperfect understanding of Zetherian customs. It was everything he'd never dared to hope for. A chime from the communication console interrupted breakfast. Marcus activated the display to find Administrator Chen's face appearing in hologram. Sorry to disturb you so early, Chen said, but I have news. The Terran-Zetherian Joint Council has approved your proposal. The Haven's Rest Agricultural Institute will receive full funding and recognition as an official interspecies research facility. Marcus felt Xena's hand slip into his as they absorbed the news. Their hybrid garden had grown into something larger, a demonstration project that was drawing visitors from across the galaxy. Soon, it would become a proper institute, training the next generation of interspecies agriculturalists. There's more, Chen continued. They want you to establish similar programs on 12 other colony worlds. Congratulations, you two. You're about to become very busy. After Chen signed off, the family sat in comfortable silence, contemplating the future that was opening before them. Through the window, they could see the garden spreading toward the horizon, a living testament to what could grow when different roots shared the same soil. Scared? Zena asked softly. Marcus considered the question seriously. There would be challenges ahead. Other colonies might not be as accepting as Haven's Rest had eventually become, and not every attempt at integration would succeed. But looking at Pip's bright eyes and Zena's glowing skin, feeling the new life growing beneath his wife's hands, he felt only anticipation. "No," he said finally. "Excited." Pip jumped up from the table, grabbing both adults by the hands. "Come on, the morning glory vines are opening and I want to show baby sibling how pretty they are." They followed their daughter into the garden, where the hybrid morning glories were indeed unfurling their petals to catch the early sunlight. The flowers were impossible things, part terrestrial biology, part Zytherian light cultivation, that glowed with soft inner radiance, while releasing a fragrance that seemed to sing. Marcus wrapped his arms around his family, watching Pip dance among the flowers while explaining to her unborn sibling about roots and light and the magic that happened when different worlds chose to grow together. Above them, the morning sun climbed higher, casting rainbow patterns through the crystalline leaves of their impossible garden. In the distance, other colonists were beginning their daily routines, humans and Zytherians working side by side in the fields and laboratories they'd built together. Children of both species ran laughing through the settlement, their games a mixture of traditions from two worlds learning to become one. It wasn't paradise. There were still arguments, still moments of misunderstanding, still the occasional flare of old prejudices. But it was home, and it was growing stronger every day, nurtured by the same patient care they gave their plants. Marcus kissed the top of Zena's head, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. "Ready for another day?" Her answering smile was like sunrise breaking over the crystal mountains, and her skin blazed with patterns that spoke of love, hope, and the endless possibility of new beginnings. "Always," she said, and together they walked deeper into their garden of two worlds, where impossible things grew strong in the light of an alien sun.